Now I call upon Srimati Hema Hari, honored speaker, and she's going to talk about the concept of Meru. D.K. Hema Hari, born in Mysore, grew up in Bombay to graduate in physics and in computer engineering from Bombay University. She's a PMI certified project management professional. After 20 years of successful career in the IT industry, working for multinational companies, managing and mentoring and nurturing innovations and new technology, she has changed the gears and together with her husband authors books, films and other works to disseminate their Bharat Gyan compilation. I welcome you ma'am.
Jai Gurudev, pranam to all of you, and at the onset I would like to thank Sri Narendra Lambaji, if he's here, for having insisted that we take part in this conference and share whatever we have compiled with everybody present here. And we did have a session yesterday on the history of Indic architecture. Today we shall look a little bit about Meru. Now, what prompted us to get into Meru? See, basically we are working on the Indian civilization as such, understanding the civilization, trying to compile whatever information we can get from various sources and formats. And this was triggered when we visited Egypt. And we all know that the moment somebody says pyramids, the first thing is Egypt. And nobody talks about anything beyond Egypt when it comes to pyramids. But in Indian thought, we know the word Meru has always been associated with pyramids. And if you look here, here is something very, very interesting. I'm just showing you a few pages, some things that we have jotted down in our book, Roots in India, which is part of our Autobiography of India series. We say the famous ones, of course, but the maximum number of pyramids are in Central America. The most number in Central America, the largest is in Bosnia, which was discovered very recently because they were firing bullets at a structure and they were bouncing back from a hill. It was a huge hill and covered with mud. And people were finding that the bullets that were being fired at that structure were all, bouncing back. Then when they discovered, they found that it is to be a structure which is actually a man-made structure, very huge one. And elaborate one, we all have visited, most of us have visited Borobudur or we have seen it in pictures. The highest pyramid is in Turkey. It is Mount Nimrut, which is a man-made pyramid. And you have a deepest pyramid which is undersea in Japan. You have pyramids which are strewn all across in Ireland, and there are some which are lying hidden in China. In Tahiti you have pyramids. We'll show you most of these in Tenerife, in Southeast Asia, even in Persia you have the biblical pyramid which is called Ziggurat. Let's look at some of them. So many pyramids. Actually, we were quite, surprised when we were working on pyramids. There was this BBC documentary which had about 46 or odd pyramids.
I'm sorry to interrupt. What happened was we had been for a program, both of us, and then we saw they were selling a BBC DVD documentary which spoke about some 20 or 30 pyramids across the world,
pyramids.
Or something across the world, and they said there are pyramids all over, but we don't know why there are pyramids all over. So that's why that year-long document, that 1 hour-long documentary, yes, itna jagah pe hai, we've got all over, but why it's there, we don't know, was how they ended it. That's triggered us to do this work, and now we found that not only in those 30 or 40 places that BBC documentary has pointed out, we have pyramids in over 70 places all over the world. Almost double that.
See, look at this. Mexico, we all know about these, the Pyramid of the Moon, the Sun. Then you have the Inca. In Ecuador, you have pyramids. In Peru, 60 million stones were used. So many of them all over the world. This is even older than the Machu Picchu.
Look at the clear shape of pyramid there. All across the world, spread. If there's one structure that's common to the world, it is your pyramids.
See, in West African coast, in Tenerife Islands off Spain, in Ireland, you have these tiny, tiny, very cute ones. In England too, there is one.
It's 5 acres wide. It's not, nothing is small. It's not gigantic. In Ukraine, you have. You could the remains there.
Yes, these are man-made pyramids.
We have divided 2 types. Can you just go back one slide for his question? See here, we have divided 2 types. One is
Man-made, these
one
are
is
natural.
So we're looking only man-made for the next 5 minutes. And can you
So
show
like
the
I said, they may look natural, it looks like a mountain, and they thought it was a mountain all these while. It was only during this war, the Serbia and all these Bosnia-Herzegovina war and all that, that's when they discovered that it is actually a pyramid.
This is a town called Visoko. What happened was very interesting. Nobody thought this was a pyramid for 1,000,000 years. Okay? During this war, they were firing cannons at the people on this hill, and the cannonballs were ricocheting back. They didn't know why the cannonballs were ricocheting back. Huge cannonballs. Because it doesn't happen on a normal hill. It will go get stuck in and blast, but it's ricocheting. That's when they realized, after the war, they did this, and this gentleman took up the effort of doing it, and they found that it was a pyramid much bigger than Egyptian pyramids. But of Bosnia. Go ahead, please. Look at that pyramid size there. Go ahead.
And they find that there are 2 more pyramids. In Greece, you have some pyramids. This is in Turkey. You have many of them. This is in Nemrud. In Turkey, you also have them. They're called tumulus. I'll come to the word tumulus shortly. I'll quickly show you. Egypt, I'm not going to show you. This is very interesting in Sudan. I'll come to these words in a minute.
They don't call it pyramid, they call it Mero.
Mero.
That's a Frenchized term.
Then you have in Babylon, you have the Tower of Babel and the ziggurats. Then Persia.
See, that's the element of the pyramid there. How it looked, full form. And can you go back one slide, please? It goes back to the days of, one slide back? It goes back to the times of the great Darius, the king, which all of you have heard stories about. Darius the Great, then Xerxes. Okay, this is not the Xerox, but Xerxes, Sher-Shah, that's actually Shah becomes Sir. That's all, okay? That's Cyrus. Look at the size of it.
Burma, Thailand, all of them. And this is the one in Tahiti. In fact, we use the pyramids to trace how ancient India had a connect with ancient America, and it was through the Shanti Sagar, the Pacific Ocean. Look at the word Shanti, peace, pacify, Pacific. What a beautiful connect. And the connect between these 2 civilizations was from the east, not from the west. And the telltale signs, actually he showed you a slide yesterday, and those telltale signs are the presence of pyramids in all these places. In Micronesia, Nanmadol.
So it's a nice mala garland.
Even in Java, if you see, there are still some, you have Borobudur. You also have you have the Chandi Suko and, there are temples even now, you can find them. The ruins are there. They are in the shape of pyramids.
It's called Gunung Meru. Look at the next one. Look at the name of it. Meru. Sumeru. Gunung Meru. That's all it's called. Okay.
So, I'll come to natural pyramids later, but then just see what is common in all of these. It's their Indian connect, okay? How did we discover? When we went in Egypt, we asked them, they said pyramid, pyramid. I said, yeah, but pyramid is a Greek name. It's a Greek word. It means fire in the middle, pyre in the middle. So we all know that how pyramids focus the energies in the center. So, pyre in the middle. But what is your Egyptian name? What is your local name in your local tongue?
Pharaonic name.
Pharaonic. They said Mr. They just said Mr. See, the Egyptian language, the vowels tend to get dropped. So, it's the main consonants. So, they just said Mr. And then, but that's very similar to Meru. And further up the Nile, if you go to Sudan, like we just saw, it is Mero. So look at the similarity. Then this is yet another very intriguing thing. In Turkey, during our travel in Turkey, we
Can
found
you pause a
that.
minute here? Can you pause a minute here? Sorry. See, in Egypt, which is Misr, Egypt is one name, its other name is Misr. Misr is what? That's the name of Egypt. Actually, old name of Egypt, Misr. Mishra, Misr, mixture. It's a place of amalgam of all civilizations, all peoples together. So that's Misr, M-I-S-R. Egypt's official bank is called Bank of Misr.
They still call themselves Mishra in their
They
local
call themselves
language.
only Misr in their local language.
And India has called Egypt Mishra Desh.
Mishra Desh. Look at, we call them Mishra Desh only in all our traditional texts. So there's a distinct connect between the civilization of Bharata and the civilization of Misra. Very distinct connect. And not only that, along the same river, in the northern end of the river, it was called Mru, the pyramids. In the southern end of the river, where the river passes through Sudan, Khartoum, it's called Mero, M-E-R-O-E, Mero. So the similar structures have got phonetically similar meaning, names and similar meanings both in India and in Egypt. Look at this, how beautiful the connect is. Amazing, isn't it?
So far away. And
So you have to go by camel to see it. Next time all of you want to go, see, don't go in these tours. You will not get to see all these things. You must go by camel, only you can see it, okay?
And in Turkey and lot of East Europe, they have these burial monuments. And they are called tumulus, which is again a Greek influence, the word, like a tunnel and a funnel and all that. But the other local word is kurgan. One will wonder how kurgan and India are related. If you look at this, in South Indian languages, kur means heap.
A
Kur
heap
means
of stones
heap.
is
Heap of stones is called kur. Even today, if you go to the bazaar, vegetables, sometimes they don't sell it by kilo. They'll just heap the vegetables and say one kuru is so much, one kuru, two kurus and so on. So kuru means a heap. So kurgan for such kind of pyramids and Meru in other places, so well they resonate with the Indian thought and the Indian practice. Now, the next thing would be, in India, do we have pyramids? See, we have seen that there are pyramids all over, but why don't we have no tour guide, no tour book talks about pyramids in India? Do we have pyramids in India other than the word Meru? If you look at it, you'll be surprised. The Brihadishwara temple that we have all been talking about for the last 2 days and for so many years is actually Dakshina Meru, is how it is referred to colloquially. Dakshina Meru. So it's a Meru in the Dakshin because of its structure of the Gopuram. There is yet another Meru in South India. It's called Uttara Meru. See, if there is a Dakshina Meru, they wouldn't have called it Dakshina Meru if there is not an Uttara Meru. Which is the Uttara Meru? There is a place itself called Uttara Meru.
The proper big village town south of Kanchipuram. Today, all of you know where Kanchipuram is. It's one of the big centers of tradition. It's one of the Sapta Nagari, right? Sapta Mokshapuri. South of that is this town, very prosperous, called Uttara Merur, North Meru. And this is the temple there, Uttara Merur.
And this temple is quite unique in the sense there is a temple, there are few temples, the very famous temple for Muruga, there's Kartikeya, there's also a temple for Vishnu. And the Vishnu temple has got 3 tiers. In the Vimana itself, they've got 3 stories, and normally you can't climb the Vimana in temples, but in this temple you can climb, and you will find Vishnu
Vimana
in different poses, reclining, standing, sitting, and you can climb up on the Vimana. So that is a famous thing about Uttara Merur. You come to Rajasthan, we all know Jaisalmer, Jaisalmer. But it is actually Jaisalmeru. It's the fort of Jaisalmer which was built by Raja Jaisal.
Jaisalmeru. See how simple it is. Okay, which is the other Meru in Rajasthan? Huh?
Somebody saw what I scrolled. Yes.
Did you read a book?
Ajmer. Ajaya Meru. Look at it.
Ajaya.
There's an old painting.
Jaya,
only from
Ajaya.
Then, of course, we have Sumeru, the good Meru.
Okay, okay, this conference is sponsored by Sumeru, right? That's why we thought it fit to speak about Sumeru. Okay. All this.
So this is one of the mountains in the Himalayas. There are
Where's
various
Devan?
versions as which is the right one. There is a Meru Parvat, which people very distinct. It's different from Mount Kailash. Mount Kailash is it has a word called also Axis Mundi as the navel of the earth. But various local languages, you have various names for it. There's only one person who has climbed Mount Kailash. There's no permission to climb otherwise. Very distinctly it stands out. And these
you
are all
also
the other...
separately, you see all these Merus and you have a separate Meru. Mount Kailash is not Meru, you have a separate Meru. Separate mountain called Meru Parvat. In the same range. Distinct. Yeah, Mount Meru, you can see Spiti Valley, yes.
So in our literary works, we have lot of work, lot of mention of Meru. And we also use Meru in connect with the human body. Meru Danda. There's a Yogasana pose which is Meru Danda. We have used it in worship. So besides the similarity of words, where lies the union? Okay, if you see, in Meru, you will see a beautiful expression of maths. And we have always associated Meru with, we never say Meru, we'll say Meru Maha Yantra. There is one Yantra which usually also goes with the word Meru, which is what we've been worshipping. Now, what does this connect with Meru and maths? There is a series which is called the Pascal Triangle in maths. It's a
How
way
many of you
patterns,
have studied maths? Pascal triangle? What is it? It's Meru. Let's see how it's Meru now.
So this is called Meru Prastara in Indian sciences. And this was discussed by Pingala in Chanda Shastra around 200 BCE. And this Pascal triangle is something that has come about in sciences which we have now started using in 17th century CE after a person called Blaise Pascal, a French mathematician. It represents a arrangement of numbers. Now what is this? Also known popularly as Fibonacci sequence. That is how we have known of it in school, where you have a sequence 1, 1, first two numbers are just 1, and then 1 plus 1 gives you 2, 2 plus 1 gives you 3, 2 plus 3 gives you 5. So every number is the sum of the preceding two numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 5, 5 plus 3, 8, then 13, then 13 plus 8, 21, 21 plus 13, 34, and so on. Now what they did, this is also later, it has been found in texts such as Gopala, the mathematician in
Hemachandra.
1135, then Hemachandra in 1150. So now the mathematical community, they have decided to rename Fibonacci sequence as Hemachandra series.
Rightfully.
So for the last few years, it is now being called Hemachandra series.
Even in textbooks in Europe, it's being called now. And the key person who started it off, renaming it is Manjul Bhargava, the Fields medalist in maths, okay, which is equal to the Nobel. So he calls it all his work only as Hemachandra. Hemachandra was a Jain. So he was using about this. And look at the key point. Who is this Fibonacci? He was a tax collector's son. So he was interacting with the traders who are coming from India. So he got the data from them through trade discussions, all those things. And he says that my father was a public scribe of Bejia, where he was worked for the customs, defending interests of the peasant merchants. So from that he collected, and from them he learned the numbers 1 to 9 and 0.
So he says very clearly, I learned the art of counting using the 9 Indian figures.
And also, he also got this Fibonacci, what we call the Meru Prastara or Hemachandra series. And what happened? We call it today Fibonacci series. He was just a transmitter.
Now, why is this Fibonacci series very important in the world of maths? And generally, how do you see this in the universe? See, maths is nothing but it is a representation of what you see in the universe, what you see in nature, translated into understandable patterns by people for us to talk about is maths. And there you see that when you take the ratio of those two consecutive numbers, then you have 3, 5 and 3, then 8 and 5 and so on, it gives you a standard ratio which is 1.618, which they call it as phi. And they call it as a golden ratio or a golden mean. And anything drawn with this ratio, you get a spiral. So this is the square with 1, then 2, then you arrange it 2 by 2, then 3 by 2, 5, and so on. And when you take from that angle, you start drawing the subtending arc, it comes out to be a spiral. So when you draw the squares of those subsequent numbers, you get the arc, and that is a natural pattern you see in the galaxy. See, this is it. 1, 1, 2 by 2, 3 by 3. Then 3 and 2 give you 5. 5 and 3 give you 8. 8 and 5 give you 13.
See how it goes, how it spirals.
So this and this will give you a 21 by 21 square. And that's how it goes.
This is called the golden, no, one second, just pause here, just please, if you don't mind. So we call it gold, this is called as golden ratio in Europe. And what they say is, the pyramids of Egypt follow the golden ratio. The angles of pyramids of Egypt follow the golden ratio. But the point is, there's one more key point is what she's going to show. It's part of nature. It's part of Prakriti. Let's see how she's going to show you that. Look at it
All
there.
of these are supposed to exhibit golden ratio. An acorn, a snail, even sunflower, the way the the florets are arranged in the, the bed. All
Everywhere.
of
You
these,
see across you see this golden ratio in nature and in practical. So this is what is used for practical application. Now you can see that.
So once you look at this, this is a very interesting point that I would like to place before all of us. This is, we all use this word, hatke thinking, think lateral. We are all used to thinking of pyramids or, anything like a hill as something to climb, right? We all look at it as we start from the base and then we are going to the top to that peak. The other interesting perspective, if you see at this arrangement, what it is saying is, you start with 1, 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 3, 3 becomes 5, 5 becomes 8. So it is actually talking about growth from there on. And as you are growing higher as well. So it is talking about a process of growth which is growing in spread and height. So rather than only just scaling, if we start looking at Meru as something that is depicting growth, we are having a next session on prosperity and abundance, Vastu and prosperity and abundance. So this Meru structure, and very, very interesting, in many places, you may, it is, these are things for thought, and a lot of Vastu specialists who have been reading a lot of these scriptures, and I'm sure Meru would not have escaped these Vastu scriptures. The way Meru has been used, if you see in Egypt and Sudan and all that, Kurgan, Tumulus and all, they've been used for burying the dead. They're associated with death. And the word mr, if you see, also has the association with death, mritya. But in India and in ancient Americas alone, what we find is they have been used for worship more than dead. Even in Thailand, Meru Mat is, they use the Meru to carry the dead body. The king is normally carried in a Meru Mat. The procession is called Meru Mat. And the structure of that is a Meru Mat, I'll show you. But in India and ancient America, in Mexico, those temples are temples for praying, not temples for dead. They are temples for the sun, temple for the moon. And we have also used, and even in Indonesia, those temples that we visited, the Candi, Suko and all that, they're all temples for worship, not so much as for the dead. And we also connect Meru more with, we use Meru for yajna. The shed is called Parnashala. And people are supposed to sit on,
So
at
elevated
1/3
height.
distance.
The Yajaman Karta, they're supposed to sit at an elevated position in the Parnashala. Okay, before, can I interrupt you for a second here? The
Many seconds, he's forgetting the law of integration. Many seconds together becomes a few minutes.
Okay. So since she said about Thailand, how many of you know that the previous king of Thailand who attained Swarga 2 years back? How many of you have heard that the king of Thailand who was ruling from the time of World War II, he died 2 years back? Any of you know? The king of Thailand died 2 years back.
Rama
Okay.
9.
Wait.
Oh, sorry.
She breaks everything. I wonder what is his official name? He's got some name, official. Okay. The present king is called Vajrakan. But you know, that's his personal name. But what's his official name? Rama the 10. His father who was ruling was called Rama the 9. Okay. And this is of the image of Rama the 8 in 1946. And when they die, what do? They keep the body in the Meru chariot. And they take him to the Meru Mat, where his soul is supposed to ascend to the Swarga. Okay? So you have the Frasu Meru. Look at the concept. There's a connect across the world of this. The concept of Meru. Okay? All similar purposes. Yeah, go ahead, please. I want to just say, so even in Thailand, the king is called Ramada 9, 10. Okay, go ahead. Now this is very important. Go back. Supposedly the world's most famous painting, okay, follows the same golden ratio. The same Meru Prasthara. And the man that was designed by Da Vinci has the same concept. So look at when you're talking about the great ones, they follow the same concept across the world. Go ahead, please. Thank you.
So the idea is that you find that, it repeats this Fibonacci series. It gives rise to all these drawings like fractals and so on. So how do we understand Meru?
See, Isfahan is supposed to be the great center for art in the Persian world. How many of you heard of Isfahan? There are a few people today in different parts of India called Isfahani because they came from Isfahan.
There is a mall in Chennai which is called Isfahani
Mall.
Center. Isfahani
Okay,
Mall.
Isfahan. It's a very great center. Can you go back? Can you go up one? You came down. Go up. Look at that. This follows the same pattern. This mosque in Isfahan follows the same pattern. Why? It was Indian artisans who were taken as slaves to Isfahan and Samarkand 1,000 years back to build these structures there. So they've used the knowledge that they had. Look at this. It's all very mathematical. Yes.
So this Meru, to understand, so like that BBC documentary ended, like why are these there? So we are fortunate in India that we have this other part of Meru, which is the software, which is there in our text, which we can go through and try to understand, both from text, from tradition, from architecture. All of this, I think, is where we'll be able to give the answer to this Meru. And yet another source for understanding Meru, when you say that Meru has also been used as yantra, and you have this triad of mantra, tantra, and yantra. We all know when you say Meru is...
One second. The three tra, yantra, tantra, mantra is a triad. This is a very important triad. Could you explain about that question? You jumped that.
So today it's become a very common practice. Many people do this pyramidal meditation. So you have pyramids, you go inside the pyramid and then you meditate because the energies are supposed to be high and all that. And all of you would know, being architects, that these walls of the pyramids are naturally, a closed pyramid would keep giving rise to reflections, and there would be, so many harmonics that would keep arising with the waves bouncing off the walls within inside a Meru. Look at the words that we have for mantra, yantra, tantra. How do we understand this triad of mantra, yantra, tantra? Mantra, we all know, is the mind, man. Okay, something to do with our mind. And we use mantra in the Veda. Why do we use that? Why do we call those verses as mantra? Because each of them, and what is mind? It is that which is stirred by the senses. that which vibrates, it undergoes vibrations, flutters because of all the inputs that your senses is giving the mind, right? So your mind can resonate. It has this power to vibrate, which is what we saw in this thing about, he showed Ganapati Stapati's beautiful line about the huge cave and, the consciousness and how it vibrates, and Vastu is all about vibration. This is the mantra angle. What is the yantra? These apply at various levels. So at a human level itself, you have your mind. You have, yantra is a machine, it's a device, it's that which has the force and power to act. And
Yantraha.
it can spread. Look at the word yantra, it is coming from the root ya, which means to spread, right? So ya and yana, a vehicle which moves. So the ya, it spreads its action, it spreads its power, and this is a device, and what is that? Nothing but your body. Besides a physical machine, even your body is a machine. And tantra is the technique. It comes from tantu, thread, that which connects. So it is a technique. It connects the vibration and the device. It connects the source of energy and the device on which it is being acted upon. That is the technique.
She said it too fast. All of us are wearing cotton dress, right? What's the cotton thread called in the Indian language? Tantu. Tantu, that is the thread that connects. So tantra here is a connecting point. Look at how each word has got a very earthy, grounded meaning.
And a tantri, he is one who connects, he is the priest who connects you with the divine. So that shows the connect, the technique. So your body itself has got, so you have all the practices. So you have yoga, which connects your mind and your body. So in your body you have that. You have the same triad concept. It has to work for even physical structures. So it is only from the perspective of Vastu that we will be able to unearth the connection between the mantra, the vibrations that happen within the yantra, which is the pyramid, and the technique is lying in the scriptures, which is, I think, for people like you all to really unravel and give it out to the world and reclaim the space of pyramid, reclaim the concept of pyramid, and show how the hardware all across the world can be interpreted using this concept of Meru from India. So that is a thought that we felt is very relevant for the Vastu conference here, and which is what we wanted to share with you all. Sorry, time up? Good.
Probably go to the capsule.
Yeah.
So you can go to the capsule, you can show that. See, this is the pyramid concept in
So
Tokyo.
these
It's there in
kind
a
of
book.
yantras, these kind of maths, people have been worshipping them itself. They're called sangaku. They're geometric patterns which are hung in temples. In Japan, you have them. They are mathematical, they're there in the form of circles. You have Angkor Wat, which has been created. So the temple has been built. So God itself is maths. His residence is maths, which has been built.
Also mathematical.
Borobudur itself is
Okay,
maths.
that's a Kailasa.
Look at the niches and spires here in Borobudur. All this would not have been possible without maths, detailed maths. Yeah. And this is what we have as yantra,
This is
mini
what
yantra drawings.
all your yantras, especially all the Shakti temples, you have yantra there in the front. Meru yantra, Ardha Meru yantra, all the yantras. And what you do in Kolam, Rangoli, is again the same. What you talk about Meru Prastara is what you do in your Rangoli. I'm sure most of you, many of you ladies would have done Rangolis of these patterns. Without knowing they are the Meru yantra patterns you're doing. In front of your house, in front of your puja room, and look at, so this is the, okay, we don't have time to show you the
Natural
natural
Merus,
Merus.
there are many.
Just one click and move away. So you got natural Merus also. You got man-made, you got natural, all across the world again.
See, look
Different
at this angel falls in Venezuela. It's called Kerepakupai Meru.
Unfortunately, today it's known as Angel Falls. But the original name is Meru. In the local African name. Similarly in Mexico, what you call Machu Picchu, that's a Meru.
From through the Machu Picchu, you can see the
Again,
two
you have
Merus.
used all the westernized names now, the European names, so you forgot the original native names.
In Tanzania, they call this Meru. And strangely, many of these Merus are, volcanoes. Look at this.
Mahameru, Gunung Mahameru.
These are the natural ones.
So you got all over the world, you got both man-made and natural. All of them called the same connection name Meru. So what does it say? The hardware is all over the world. And not knowing how to use the hardware they are talking. Whereas the software is here with India, with all of us. So only if you connect the software and hardware, you'll know. Otherwise, it'll be like the blind man looking for an elephant. That's what is going to happen. And you got the text all over. So we have to understand. And do you know what? Today, you have the concept of halo, right? Before the halo, what is the concept? To show the person was knowledgeable. It was the Meru triangle. All over the world. If you take the Srivatsa is there, concept. I'm sure all of you know about the Srivatsa concept very well. This is there in
Israel.
Yahweh concept. In Israel, the same Yahweh concept. You go there, the same concept. Before the halo thought. It was all
See
the
here.
Meru. So halo came later. Before it was to say a person of knowledge. Look there. Again, the concept of Yahweh. Everywhere.
So fundamentally, in Jewish thought, it was triangle that really represented knowledge.
So that is what we're talking about. So it's a question of knowledge. So the hardware is all over the world. They don't know how to use the hardware. We have the software. Unless you mix, interlink both the hardware and software, we're not going to be unravel it. And all these people here who are involved in the field of Vastu, you are the software owners. You are the Microsoft of it. You are the Google. Hardware can be anywhere. Can you use hardware without the software? It's just a nice dabba. Right? So you are the people. So first recognizing it yourself. Then understanding that knowledge. Relishing that knowledge. Sharing with all. So that this world can once again be a Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. As it was for many millennia. Right? Where Bharata is the center of the earth. Where on the west you have Europe. And the east you have Mexico and the Americas. Right? So the center like that. Got it? That's why Ujjain was the, what you call GMT today, which is there in the Greenwich Meridian in England, was the timeline. Earlier it was Ujjain, the timeline of India. So it was center, both spanning the east up to the Americas and the west up to the Tenerife and Greenland.
So thank you once again for the opportunity to share this with you all. Thank you. Jai Gurudev.